Okay, I'm going to do 3 very common devices to turn your boring arpeggios into something more like bebop language. Okay, so we're going to take a very simple F major 7 arpeggio today, because of the last video basically. These procedures can be applied to any sort of arpeggio, whether they're 4-note arpeggios, 3-note triads, 9th chords, even scales. They work a lot on scales, but today we're just going to be doing it on the F major, maybe a couple of others if I feel like it. The very first way to make a arpeggio sound more jazz is to have an upbeat, because I reckon that most people who are getting into jazz, they tend to play everything on the beat, even on beat 1. So things tend to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 like that, right? Whereas if we put one extra note in before that on the upbeat, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, what we end up with is something a little bit hipper. What I'm doing there is I'm just adding in the 5th below the root, because we're just playing this in root position. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. Instantly it makes it more interesting. And the rhythm overall is quite interesting, isn't it? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. We end on the and as well, which is nice, as well as starting on the and. So this is quite a common device. I mean, you can see it in things like anthropology, for instance, or in ornithology. So it's a common feature. You'll think of loads of tunes which do that. Starting on the 5th seems to be quite a common bebop device, and it, kind of adds a little bit of springiness. The only one that's perhaps even more common than that is by adding a semitone below, a lower neighbor tone in the same spot on the and. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll do this with any arpeggio, by the way. Minor major 7th. Diminished, right? Anything you want, right? And you can see at the beginning of Scrapple from the Apple, for instance. Or you can come down and go up again. So please bounce, for instance. Actually, that's struggling with some barbecue, isn't it? So, these devices go right back to the beginning of jazz. But already, hopefully you can hear, just by adding that in, we're already making things sound more like actual music. And, of course, you can do this on any beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, ba, 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 or 2, 1, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. So I'm going on the and a 1 there. Or you can do it on the beat. Go 1, 2, 3, and 4, which has a different feeling to it. So play around with all those different rhythmic options. They all have a sort of certain energy to them. You can add these half steps elsewhere in your arpeggio. You can add them at the end. I'm leaning on it a little bit there, making it a bit longer, right? And 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. So that's kind of like a double syncopation there. Ba-da-ba-dee-ga-ga, which sounds really bop. Play around with the rhythms, right? If you remember like the line that I played in the last video. Ba-dee-ga-dee-ga-ga-ga. That's the accent. So and. So those last 3 notes are all sort of accented on the end. Yeah? That's something to look out for. And when you're transcribing material by people like Charlie Parker, Wes Montgomery, whoever your favourites are, be on the lookout for that kind of hip rhythmic phrasing and then see if you can adapt it. We can also use upper neighbor tones, and if we use an upper and lower together, we get a enclosure. So I'm going to go, as I've been doing a chromatic lower neighbor, the rule is I do a diatonic upper neighbor. So I do a whole tone in this case for the root of the F major chord. That works well on the root. Well on the beat, should I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. You can work on the upbeat as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Different energy, right? Different feeling. Let's put that semitone in again. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2. Nice.
Jazz.
That's on the upbeat there. Or 1, 2. Different feeling again. That's much more on the beat when I start on the beat, obviously. But if I took that semitone out, sounds a little bit more syncopated. That's So that's an enclosure around every single note of the arpeggio there. We're going whole tone, semitone around the third, whole tone around the fifth, semitone around the seventh. Always chromatic lower, diatonic upper. So we don't want to use too many triplets, but we can just use a little burst of a triplet to give us a bit of springiness. So if I'm playing this F major, I would go triplet 2, 1 and a 2, 1 and a 2, right? 1/8 note triplet followed by a beat, followed by a note on the beat. So 1 and a 2, 1 and a 2, or 3 and a 4, whatever it is you're doing, right? And we'll put in that semitone before 1. This works really well on the and of 1, 1. Like that, right? And we can do this with any arpeggio we want. That's a really common bebop device, actually. My tune, which is called The Keeper of the Flame, does this. I would also suggest maybe walking down by semitones to the root. Now this is particularly in the context of the F major subbing for a G7, as I showed in my last video. I suppose it's like a little fragment of what you might call the bebop scale or something. This works for any chord, any of those chords. They all sound great. But in the case of the F major, if you want to, you can actually use something called a pivot, which is where we take the other notes, those three, and put them down an octave. So we get this, which is something I overuse, like massively. At some point I'll have to get some new tricks, but I hope you find those useful. You don't necessarily have to take bleeding chunks of people's solos and use those as language. You can observe these things being used in bebop heads and in solos, have an eye out for them, and it's amazing how little you need to turn a simple scale, and all of these are also applicable to scales, or arpeggio, how simply you can just add a note in or two, or change a rhythm and turn it into jazz language. So have fun with that, and I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.